As Charles Dickens wrote in his book The Tale of Two Cities, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times, it was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness, it was the epoch of belief, it was the epoch of incredulity, it was the season of light, it was the season of darkness, it was the spring of hope, it was the winter of despair. To me, this is the perfect sentence that summarizes the spring and autumn period in Chinese history. During this time, social productive forces were greatly enhanced, and the entire society was in a period of great transformation. However, it is also a time of numerous political turmoil and chaos, with wars happening between different states all around China. At the same time, the emergence of different schools of thought reached an unprecedented height. When this society made tremendous progress, yet people's moral values become deteriorated. Therefore, there is a polarization in social values. On the one hand, is the extreme pragmatism of "anyway is acceptable as long as it fulfills the goal." On the other hand, is using moral value as the ultimate evaluation in life. Among many other great thinkers, Confucius believes that moral value is the most effective way to help governors to rule and guide their people, which is what he called governing with moral value. Confucius's moral political theory is based on the moral growth of individuals, families, and countries, gradually completing the goal of cultivate the self, regulate the family, govern the state, then lead the world to peace, and eventually create the ideal virtuous society with high moral standards. Governing with moral value comes from the Wei Zhang section of Analects. He who exercises government by means of his virtue may be compared to the North Polar Star, which keeps its place and all the stars turn towards it. Here, we can see how Confucius places moral values as high and meaningful as the North Pole star in the sky. He believes that moral values are the ultimate solution to most social issues. They can awaken the kindness within people's hearts when doing good deeds and use people's sense of shame to restrain them from doing bad things. Later in this Wei Zhang section, he explains why rulers should use governing with moral value to rule people. He said, if the people be led by laws, and uniformity sought to be given them by punishments, they will try to avoid the punishment, but have no sense of shame. If they be led by virtue, and uniformity sought to be given them by the rules of propriety, they will have a sense of shame, moreover will become good. Again, Confucius believes that moral value can awake the people's inner sense of shame and follow the rules of society voluntarily. Here, another fundamental theory that supports Confucius's moral value theory is how Confucians believe that people are born with good morals. Whether people are born good or bad is a question that has been debated in China for countless years. According to Menzi, the tendency of man's nature to good is like the tendency of water to flow downwards. Indeed, many Confucian thinkers believe it is common sense that all men's nature is good. As Menzi also points out, the feeling of commiseration belongs to all men, so does that of shame and dislike, and that of reverence and respect, and that of approving and disapproving. The feeling of commiseration implies the principle of benevolence, that of shame and dislike, the principle of righteousness, that of reverence and respect, the principle of propriety, and that of approving and disapproving, the principle of knowledge. From this point of view, the purpose of governing with moral value is to promote goodness, guide people with positive values to understand what they should do and shouldn't. However, compared with legalism, their core value is using laws and other forms to tell people what to do and which violators will face punishment. In comparison between these two ideologies, the strict discipline of legalists can be effective in a short time and bring the society back in order, but it may lead to class conflict and tension in the far future. However, the Confucian ideal of governing with moral value will not be effective in a short period, but it has the potential to solve many social problems in the long term. Still, people may question, although human natures are intrinsically good, can we regulate people only through morals value? Actually, Confucius provides a solution to this question. According to the Analects, when the master went away, Zhenyu acted as driver of his carriage. The master observed, "How numerous are the people?" You said, "Since they are thus numerous, what more shall be done for them?" "Enrich them," was the reply. "And when they have been enriched, what more shall be done?" The master said, "Teach them." Of course, Confucius knew that his moral political philosophy could never be implemented when people were still starving and struggling between the poverty line. Therefore, he knows that his idea can only be implemented when the country has a relatively high living standard. As records of the grand historian wrote, when the granaries are full, the people follow appropriate rules of conduct, and when there is enough to eat and wear, the people know honor and shame. Interestingly, Confucius's idea about enriching people reminds me of a psychology theory named Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This theory was proposed by an American psychologist named Abraham Maslow. He classified human necessities into 5 categories, and people need to fulfill each level of needs step by step like a pyramid. Just as what Confucius said, people need to meet their physiological needs first, then reach their esteem and self-actualization needs later. Here, I am astonished by how visionary Confucius could propose a similar theory thousands of years ago before Maslow. Indeed, Confucius believed that force, punishment, and tyranny could not fundamentally solve the problem of his society. In this age of upheaval, seeking quick measures can only be effective for a while but can never fundamentally solve the problem. When lenient rules are no longer effective, the government has to implement stricter and harsher regulations to govern their people and eventually falls into a dead cycle. To Confucius, raising people's morality is the fundamental solution to the problems of human society. Although Confucius' this moral philosophical theory still may sound absurd and impractical even today, 2,000 years later than the spring and autumn period. Our world is still lying on laws and constitutions to punish and tell people what to do or not. Some part of our constitution is still based on the concept of an eye for an eye from the Hammurabi Code thousands of years ago. Immanuel Kant once said, "Two things fill the mind with ever new and increasing admiration and awe. The oftener and the more steadily we reflect on them, the starry heavens above and the moral law within." Nevertheless, the temporal impracticality of Confucius's moral political philosophy does not mean that Confucius's thinking is wrong. Instead, we should make it to our goal to work on. Through the effort of the entire humanity, I foresee in the far future, the dreamland that Confucius imagined will become a reality.